Welcome to the first Q&A on the channel. I plan on having this be a monthly series, so comment down below your questions and it may be answered on the next one. So let's get right into it. Our first question comes from Spider Carnage 2099. If you could pick any Jedi Master or Sith Lord to train you, who would it be and why? Well, I would pick a Jedi Master. I don't think anyone in their right mind would choose a Sith Lord. We have 6 movies and multiple TV episodes and comic books showing us why that wouldn't be a pleasant experience.
Do it.
The Jedi I would go with to train me would have to be Qui-Gon Jinn, mostly because he was ahead of his time and didn't follow the dogmatic and arrogant ways of the Jedi Order. He was always a few steps ahead, and Qui-Gon is the Jedi you'd want as a master. You can trust him with your secrets and worries, unlike other masters on the council, such as Mace Windu, Yoda, or Ki-Adi-Mundi, who would probably tell you to just shrug it off. A part of me would like to say Anakin because he was the most fun of all the Jedi to train with and learn from, but when it comes to being the best Jedi possible, Qui-Gon is the guy you want guiding and teaching you in the ways of how to view the Force and the universe around you. Luke Skywalker is another great choice, but I personally would go with Qui-Gon. This next question comes from my friend Concordia Jedi. He's a very talented writer, and he has a YouTube channel where he makes what-if fanfictions and fanon stories about his original character named Cassius. You guys should go check him out. So his question is, what has been your favorite experience when creating your content on YouTube? My favorite experience has honestly been writing these what-if stories for the past 5 years now and reading all of your guys' feedback, sharing the same level of passion that I have for these stories. One of the best feelings as a writer is creating something within your mind that you care about deeply, whether it be a character, a story, or overall concept, and sharing it with the rest of the world and having hundreds and thousands of people tell you that they were emotionally moved by what you wrote. It's one of the most amazing feelings a writer can have. Our third question comes from TDAP, that's such a funny name. If you could bring anything from Legends into canon, what would it be? I've made some tweets and posts in the past talking about this subject, and I would personally bring in Galen Marek into the current timeline. He's on top of my list of characters in the old EU that I would pick out. I'd choose him because Starkiller as a character has so much potential, not just in the Force Unleashed video games, whether we're talking a new rebooted series or a continuation of the second game, but also in a live action setting. Sam Witwer isn't getting any younger, and I think it would be a huge waste of potential if we never see him as Starkiller in some form through a live action film or even limited series on Disney+. The Andor show gave us an Easter egg of his Sith Stalker helmet from the dark side ending to the first game when he raided Hoth and turned Luke to the dark side, so I hope this is a subtle tease that he may debut in live action soon. It would just be incredibly satisfying to see Starkiller and Vader share scenes in a live action setting. If I were to oversee this, I would make it a limited series on Disney Plus with 3 seasons and 13 to 20 episodes each. I would instruct the writing team to loosely adapt the first 2 games and something fresh and original towards the end of the series. Lachlan Gorena writes, if you could have any lady from Star Wars, who would they be? I know most people lean towards Padme, and nothing against Natalie Portman, she's a beautiful woman, but I'm more of a Princess Leia guy.
Hello, what have we here?
This next question comes from Darth Prodigy. What are your thoughts on Bad Batch Season 2 so far? I really like the Bad Batch. It's a great continuation of the Clone Wars, especially with the improved art style that gives it a much more cinematic and rich visual quality to it. The cast of characters are great, the story is solid. What I really like about the show is that we're finally exploring the early post Order 66 Imperial era even more, where there's still clones active within the Empire. We've only ever seen this era in comics, so it's nice to finally experience it in a tangible visual medium. I'm looking forward to the rest of Season 2. Jordan Cox writes, which what if do you believe is your favorite that you have written, and which what if do you believe you could have fleshed out more or improved? My favorite what if story that I've written so far is honestly a tie between what if Ahsoka raised Luke and Leia, or what if Yoda trained Grievous. I would lean towards the Mama Ahsoka one a bit more since She is my favorite Star Wars character, and the idea of Anakin's Padawan being tasked with raising and training his children is such an obscure yet wholesome and wonderful idea, but not as obscure and interesting, in my opinion, as General Grievous not only being a Force sensitive, but a Jedi trained by Yoda. Jedi Grievous is my favorite just because of how different the dynamics and relationships are in his timeline with established characters like Yoda and Grogu, and just the overall story that we wrote towards the end. It was very satisfying and euphoric compared to the others. Flipping Grievous on the other coin from being a ruthless, cold-blooded Jedi killer to a stoic knight in white armor, serving the Republic as a legendary Jedi is just a very cool concept as a whole. As for which what if I believe I could have fleshed out more or improved upon, I would have to say the second part of Jedi Maul or the third part to Mom Ahsoka. Looking back at those, I wish I could have added just a bit more detail. Pan writes, would you like if Disney made a Star Wars animated what if series like Marvel's? And 100% yes. A Star Wars What If series is probably the most requested show by the fans, and as someone who primarily uploads What If content, this is the one thing I want to see the most out of every Star Wars project from Lucasfilm. Sure, an Old Republic series or even a Starkiller show would be nice to see, but nothing tops a Star Wars What If series in my opinion. Now, we did have those Star Wars Infinity comics from the early 2000s that did delve into original trilogy What If scenarios, but some of those were pretty wacky and a bit out there, such as Yoda ramming the Death Star on Coruscant to kill the Emperor, which resulted in the death of millions of civilians. I understand what ifs are meant to be subjective hypotheticals, but Yoda committing that act was just incredibly out of character and pretty funny in the context of it. If a what if series were to be made, I would love if the animation art style of the Bad Batch was kept. I would ideally want 10 to 13 episodes every season, with maybe 3 episodes being focused on one scenario, but that's just my quick rough pitch on that. The former Boy Wonder writes, do you plan to ever do what ifs on any of these Star Wars Disney Plus shows? I have thought about this, but it isn't something on my priority list for now. With the exception of the IG-11 What If, I don't plan on writing any long format narrative fanfictions from the Disney Plus series. But I have thought of some ideas, such as what if Bail Organa contacted Ahsoka to rescue Leia in the Obi-Wan show instead of Obi-Wan himself? And what if Vader killed Obi-Wan in the finale, and vice versa? I'm sure when the Ahsoka show comes out, it'll have some neat ideas to write a what if story around it, but we'll see. Jack Lane writes, what is your favorite movie, book, or TV show? Well, if we're talking about Star Wars, my favorite movie is Revenge of the Sith. It's a childhood classic and a very great conclusion to the prequel era. Return of the Jedi is up there as well. They're honestly a close tie for me. As for Star Wars books, I don't really have one since I haven't read enough Star Wars books, but I do like the Plagueis novel and a few others. For TV shows, it was The Clone Wars, but after watching Andor, it's taken my #1 spot for my favorite Star Wars series. Justin Cummings writes, if you were given the chance to redo the prequel trilogy and or the original trilogy, would you take it and what would you change? If that opportunity were given to me, I couldn't take it because it would directly be stepping over the story and saga that George Lucas created. Some things are very sacred and shouldn't be tampered with, and that's how I feel about the George Lucas Star Wars story. Now, if I had to redo something, I think adding a lot of those crucial deleted scenes from Revenge of the Sith would improve the film a lot. I don't think redoing either trilogy would work because the cast are old, some are gone, and it just wouldn't end well. Redoing them in general wouldn't bring anything positive in my opinion. The original trilogy in itself is very sacred, and I just can't see a scenario where that gets remade or, in this case, rebooted with new actors and everything. It just wouldn't work. Next question comes from Dead Monkey. What is your favorite non-Star Wars franchise? This is such a difficult question, but a good one. I'd have to say it's a toss-up between Mortal Kombat, the Alien Predator universe, or the Avatar: The Last Airbender franchise. It switches from time to time depending how I'm feeling. Big Country writes, you're given the choice of whether to greenlight a redo of the sequels or make a KOTOR trilogy. Who do you get to direct which, and which one do you pursue? Hands down, I'm choosing to redo the sequels. As to who I'd pick to direct it, it would have to be the only logical choices, which are Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau. However, this would need to happen in a future where deepfake technology has advanced enough to the point where you can bring back legacy characters in their prime and not notice the difference. In this case, it would be Luke, Han, and Leia. I know many people can relate when I say the sequel trilogy did an immeasurable amount of damage to the Star Wars story and brand as a whole. It started well with The Force Awakens. I liked that movie in isolation, but then it went off the rails with The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. I understand there are people who love those films, which is fine because everyone is entitled to their preference. But for me personally and many others, it fundamentally ruins the foundation of what Star Wars is. Herb Coswell writes, "What inspired you to want to make YouTube videos?" When referring to this channel, I just love to tell stories. Writing and storytelling is my biggest passion, and being able to share my ideas with thousands of people online is something very special. YouTube gives me and other creators that opportunity to share our stories and ideas that we care for deeply. So that's the main thing that inspired me to make YouTube videos. It's the perfect platform for independent creators such as myself to express our creativity. I just love entertaining people in general. That's the driving force behind it. Normandy1998 writes, "What is your favorite arc from the Clone Wars, favorite Star Wars game, and your favorite piece of Disney Star Wars media?" This is another tough one because there's a vast variety of really good written arcs from the Clone Wars. So I'll have to say my three favorites are the Mandalore arc from season 7, the Order 66 conspiracy arc with Fives, and either the Mortis arc with the Force Gods or the Umbara arc with Rex and Pong Krell. Now when it comes to my favorite Star Wars game, I would have to say it's either the Revenge of the Sith movie game or Lego Star Wars 2, the original trilogy. Both are fantastic games, and I have so many fond memories playing them for hours on end as a little kid. The first Force Unleashed game is up there too. Again, it's just very hard to choose a favorite because they were all equally important to me and very crucial to my childhood growing up as a Star Wars fan in the 2000s. My favorite Disney Star Wars media is hands down Andor without a doubt. Prior to Andor, it was The Mandalorian, but after watching Andor, I can say that it is not only the greatest piece of Star Wars under the Disney umbrella, but the best Star Wars anything since the original trilogy, and I stand by that. Our final question comes from Ninja Master Builder, who writes, "How do you come up with ideas for new Star Wars stories in the Star Wars multiverse?" When I'm coming up with ideas for a what-if story in terms of the traditional long narrative ones, I mainly want to write something that hasn't been done, such as the concept of Jedi Grievous, for example, within the context of how we wrote it, and ideas with a similar scenario but with a unique twist, such as Anakin surviving past Return of the Jedi, but with the obvious big difference being that Luke dies instead, essentially taking his place from the original timeline. I factor in these fundamentals and just let my mind brainstorm ideas and themes within the concept that I want to build a story around. I get my best ideas when I'm either in the shower or laying in bed about to sleep, so that's my process for coming up with what if stories. Well, that's the end of the Q&A. If you've made it this far in the video, I really appreciate you so much. Please do hit that like button as it does help the channel greatly. And if you want your question answered, just comment down below and I will try to answer it in the next one. Check out my social media links below and other videos I have on the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.